Tell me about this, because now when you're an independent now.
Yeah.
So what does that say? That, to me, it says that you think the Republican Party is unsavable.
Unsavable. Oh, no doubt about it.
Because otherwise you would want to stay on, right, and reform it, but you think
it can't be saved.
It cannot be saved. I've never argued with that. I've never argued that of the false equivalency. I just said there is misinformation from both sides.
Things got intense between BillMaher and MSNBC's JoeScarborough during a late-night exchange. The conversation quickly turned uncomfortable, with Scarborough awkwardly stepping back as if he wanted to disappear. Maher, never shy about speaking his mind, sharply criticized Scarborough's opinion about Trump, tearing it apart with biting remarks. Scarborough seemed caught off guard and looked desperate to leave the set as soon as possible. The moment was tense, dramatic, and full of unexpected twists. What exactly did Joe say that set Maher off? And how did Maher react so strongly? The drama didn't disappoint. This clash was pure.
Donald Trump said that he was going to use the military and the National Guard to arrest his political opponents. He was asked if he would back off of that.
He said no.
And he said no. Yep. In fact, he doubled down. He talked about Nancy Pelosi being evil, her husband being evil, Schiff being evil, talking about arresting them. He said he was going to execute the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff because he was disloyal to him. He told another chief of staff who was a general, I wish my generals were like Hitler's generals.
Things heated up fast between BillMaher and MSNBC host JoeScarborough during a late-night talk. What started as a regular political discussion quickly turned uncomfortable. Joe made a comment about Donald Trump that didn't sit well with Maher. Instead of letting it slide, Maher fired back with strong words, calling out Joe's viewpoint in a way that left no room for confusion. His response was direct, sharp, and packed with criticism. Joe, clearly surprised by the backlash, looked uneasy and unsure of how to respond. He started to pull back from the conversation, almost like he was hoping to vanish from the stage. His body language showed he wasn't ready for the kind of heat Maher brought to the table. The exchange turned from debate to confrontation in just moments. Maher didn't hold anything back, and the energy in the room shifted as things got more intense. Joe appeared eager to wrap things up and exit quickly. Viewers could feel the tension rising with every word. Whatever Joe said, it clearly hit a nerve, and Maher wasn't about to let it slide. This wasn't just a disagreement, it was a clash that left everyone talking long after it ended.
I lived through COVID. Don't tell me there wasn't misinformation.
But there's a difference between...
I lived through stupid policies based on bad information and stifled information.
But intent matters.
That's what Zuckerberg said. He said they were forcing us not to put out...
The left often accuses Donald Trump of many things, but they seem to be doing the very same things themselves. This is what BillMaher pointed out, calling it a clear example of projecting blame onto others. According to him, liberal media outlets, especially networks like MSNBC, have also played a big role in spreading false information. There are several examples to support this. Think about the Russian collusion story promoted by Rachel Maddow, the misleading claims surrounding Hunter Biden's laptop, or the way they misrepresented the fine people comment. These stories were pushed hard, only to later be exposed as twisted or exaggerated. What's more troubling is how the media avoids taking responsibility for these mistakes. While they constantly criticize Trump and analyze every word he says, their own errors are brushed aside or completely ignored. If a conservative says something questionable, it becomes headline news. But when someone from the left makes an obviously untrue statement, it's either downplayed or passed off as a small slip-up. This kind of behavior isn't just being unfair, it's intentional. It's about shaping the story, keeping viewers upset, and making sure Trump remains the main villain. Admitting their own faults would mean they're not much different from him, and that's a truth they're not willing to accept.
You haven't changed, so you consider yourself a liberal, right?
I consider myself an old school liberal. You have to make that distinction now because, you know, the word woke, which started out as a good thing, being alert to injustice, and a lot of people get triggered by the word because when they hear it, they think of it the old meaning, which was good.
Right.
You know, stay woke. But I'm sorry, language is a living, breathing entity. Words change and they migrate and they take on a different meaning. And woke now has to answer for or for people have just used the word to ascribe a number of extreme things on the left.
This is where I have to disagree with BillMaher a bit. He suggests that only a small part of the left has gone overboard with extreme woke ideas. But let's be honest, that's not the full truth anymore. These beliefs aren't just limited to a few people on the edge. They've become a major part of the left's identity. What used to be seen as a fringe way of thinking has now spread widely. It's in politics, the mainstream media, and even the entertainment world. This mindset isn't just a phase. It's become the guide many people on the left are now following. From lawmakers to TV hosts to celebrities, many are embracing these views without question. It's almost expected now, like there's a rule book they're all reading from. And when someone like Maher points this out, it clearly makes people uncomfortable. JoeScarborough, for example, didn't have much to say when Maher brought it up. He sat quietly, offering little in return. Maybe it's because, deep down, he realizes Maher isn't wrong. The bigger issue is how long people like Scarborough can keep acting like everything is fine. At some point, ignoring what's happening becomes impossible. The silence from those who know better only adds to the problem, and eventually, they'll have to face it.
I mean, Kamala's big, I think, challenge here to win over the undecided voters is to convince them that she's not part of what they suspect she might be, sort of a stealth version of the worst excesses of the left. I said there's a coalition of Trump voters, people who really like him. They certainly are those. And then there's people who don't necessarily like him that much, but they still think he's less crazy than stuff that strikes them as aggressively anti-common sense. That takes place on the left. So that's why they keep running that ad about sex changes in prison. You know, like could you...
And every football game.
Could you get every foot... That's right.
Kamala Harris would find it nearly impossible to separate herself from the woke movement, even if she tried. The truth is, she isn't just loosely connected to it, she's deeply involved. The progressive, activist-driven side of the Democratic Party isn't some tiny group pushing ideas from the sidelines anymore. It's now the main part of the left. This isn't a hidden movement working quietly behind the scenes. It's front and center, leading the conversation. When you look at Harris's support, it's clear where she stands. Her campaign events weren't filled with moderate Democrats trying to push back against extreme views. Instead, they were crowded with enthusiastic backers of progressive values. Celebrities from the entertainment world praised her constantly. Reporters treated her with kid gloves, asking simple, friendly questions instead of challenging ones. And when any difficult news came up, many media platforms simply ignored it or gave it minimal attention. That kind of support doesn't come from a small, radical corner. It's the work of a powerful political system in action. The woke ideology isn't the exception anymore. It's become the standard playbook for much of the Democratic leadership. Pretending otherwise doesn't change the reality. What was once seen as radical has now become the expected norm within the party.
You have to, on the one hand, understand you benefited from racism if you're white. There's no doubt about it. And that has to be addressed. It can't be ignored. But also, I didn't personally do it. There's a middle ground there. It's very difficult.
Two things can be true at one time.
And they are both true at one time. I'm not personally responsible, but did I benefit? Yes, I'm sure I did. People our age definitely did. And so, if we can all agree on things like that, we could then come up with sensible policies.
I completely agree with BillMaher on this point. The only real way to heal the growing division in the country is to bring back a sense of fairness and common ground. The government should focus on solving real problems that affect everyone, rather than trying to please one side while ignoring the other. That means moving away from flashy, symbolic actions that look good on the surface, but don't actually help. We need smart, practical policies that aim to bring real change, not just empty gestures that please certain groups. Take racism, for example. It's a serious and complicated issue that can't be fixed with quick, broad actions. Addressing it properly requires a clear, thoughtful plan that tackles the actual causes without creating more harm. Policies need to be based on facts and long-term impact, not emotions or political trends. Unfortunately, that's not what we're getting from leadership today. Programs like DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, were introduced with good intentions, claiming to support equal opportunities. But in reality, many of these efforts have led to unexpected problems. They've sometimes put jobs at risk, caused division, and even impacted public safety. When ideas are pushed just to satisfy political goals instead of achieving real results, the public pays the price. What we need now is leadership that cares more about outcomes than applause. Instead of chasing popularity, officials should focus on building solid policies that make life better for everyone, regardless of race, class, or political views. If we keep moving in a direction where ideology matters more than logic, this divide will only get worse. The country doesn't need more noise or finger-pointing. It needs calm, steady decision-making that puts the well-being of all citizens first. Only then can we start to rebuild trust and unity.
But sometimes on the left, they don't want to acknowledge progress because it interferes with virtue signaling. Right. To say, we've come a long way, which we have.
It's okay to say that.
It's okay to say it, but somehow you're a better person if you say, but there's work to be done. Of course there's work to be done. There's always work to be done. We're humans. We're on Earth. There's always going to be work to be done. But let's be realistic about where we are.
BillMaher brings up an important contradiction that many people overlook. The left often presents itself as the voice of progress and equality, constantly pushing for change. But when it comes time to recognize the improvements America has actually made, they seem hesitant, almost unwilling to admit it. There's no denying that racism still exists and remains a serious challenge. However, to suggest that nothing has changed since the days of segregation is simply not true. Over the last several decades, America has made real and meaningful progress. From civil rights laws to increased representation in media, politics, education, and the workforce, the country has taken major steps forward. While there's still work to be done, we are not living in the same America that existed in the 1960s. Acting like nothing has improved not only ignores history, but it also insults the people who fought so hard to bring about those changes. But here's the troubling part. Some people seem to benefit from pretending that progress hasn't happened. Keeping the idea of constant oppression alive can be profitable. There are individuals and public figures who gain attention, influence, and even money by constantly highlighting only the negative, while ignoring any signs of hope or success. Media personalities like Whoopi Goldberg, Sunny Hostin, and Don Lemon often push a narrative that focuses heavily on racial injustice, without giving much space to any progress made along the way. This isn't just about being unaware of the facts. It's about keeping a certain story going because it draws an audience. When the public is angry, afraid, or outraged, they tune in, click more, and engage more. That drives ratings, builds personal brands, and helps sell books or fill speaking events. In that sense, keeping people divided can turn into a business model. The unfortunate result is a constant cycle of frustration and division. Instead of coming together to build on the improvements we've already made, we're stuck arguing over whether those improvements even exist. That doesn't help anyone. In fact, it slows down real progress. Recognizing how far we've come doesn't mean ignoring what still needs to be done. It means being honest about our journey, celebrating achievements while continuing to push forward. Progress and truth should never be enemies.
I've seen focus groups over the past couple of days of Trump voters who still would support him, who say things like, I like Donald Trump because of where he stands. I can't even say it with a straight face. On the issues. Now you tell me, what the does that mean? What does he, what issues? But what issues does this guy share with conservatives?
You seem to be ignoring the main reasons why many conservatives continue to support Donald Trump. Let's make it simple. Trump has always backed traditional conservative beliefs. He believes in the idea that there are only two genders and has strongly opposed letting biological males compete in women's sports. He's also taken a clear stand against the idea of men using women's restrooms and has supported laws that make sure parents are involved before children make serious decisions about gender changes. But it's not just about social issues. Trump has also taken serious steps to protect the country. Under President Biden and Vice President Harris, the borders have become less secure, and many Americans are worried about rising crime and increasing illegal immigration. Trump has promised to fix that by removing dangerous criminals, tightening border security and closing legal loopholes that put safety at risk. He's also pushed for government accountability. For example, he's worked to recover money that was lost due to waste and fraud in places like USAID. His approach focuses on being clear with the public and using money wisely, which many believe is very different from how things are being handled by the current leadership. You may choose to ignore these things, but they matter to a lot of people.
Tell me about this, because then when you're an independent now.
Yeah.
So what does that say? That, to me, it says that you think the Republican Party is unsavable.
Unsavable. Oh, no doubt about it.
Because otherwise you would want to stay on, right, and reform it, but you think it
can't be saved.
It cannot be saved.
At least one thing is clear. Under Donald Trump's leadership, the Republican Party has made a bold return. Unlike many of the so-called safe Republican candidates who failed to make a real impact over the last 20 years, Trump has managed to rally support and lead the party to a major win. And this wasn't just a small victory, it was a massive show of strength. The results made it obvious. The MAGA movement is not going away anytime soon. In fact, it's gaining more momentum. This outcome wasn't just about winning an election. It was a loud message to those in power who have ignored the concerns of regular people. Voters sent a clear response to the broken promises, bad decisions, and weak leadership that have hurt everyday Americans. The so-called elites who believed they could control the conversation and silence different opinions just got a powerful reminder that the people still hold the real power. What's even more significant is that this victory shows how fed up the public is with being overlooked and talked down to. People are tired of empty speeches and failed policies. They're choosing a different path, one that puts American workers, families, and communities first. That's exactly what the America First agenda stands for, and it's why so many people are backing it now more than ever. Joe and his party may not want to admit it, but Trump's influence is only growing. This isn't just another political cycle, it's a shift. The voices that were once ignored are now leading the way. If the last few years seemed intense, the next 4 might be even more unpredictable. Big changes are coming, and those in charge will have to face a movement that isn't backing down. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.